Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, morning after National Signing Day. Just wrapping up. Time to take a step back and do an overall evaluation of some recruiting classes. And we're starting off with the Oklahoma Sooners, a class that we've talked extensively about the last 8 months, breaking down commitments. Now we get to take a step back and talk about a few different things. One, favorite position group in this class. I think the second one is the most underrated position group in this class. Third is the position group that maybe fell short of expectations. And then fourth, and probably my favorite part of talking about recruiting classes, who's that diamond in the rough guy that's going to be a dude for Oklahoma in 3 to 4 years that maybe isn't getting talked enough about during National Signing Day. Really excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. There has been an amazing amount of support from the Oklahoma fans over the last couple months as we've kind of broken down this recruiting class and all of the commitments. Can't thank you guys enough. Y'all know I love talking recruiting, love following these guys out of high school. The amount of support you guys show, it means a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear from you guys. Favorite players in your class, or the position group that you're concerned with, we'll chop it up in the comment section. Without further ado, let's get into this one. And before we go to my favorite position group, which I think is a pretty obvious one, I want to talk a little bit about the feeling of this class. And I mean, on a wild day yesterday where you had guys like Jordan Seaton not sign their letter of intent, where you had a guy like Jeremiah Smith not sign his letter of intent and submit his paperwork until, I believe, 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night. Oklahoma, I mean, every single 27 of the commits all signed their papers, got their paperwork figured out by 11:30, I believe, time. Which, what does that tell you? There was no second thoughts about the 27 players that are committed to play for the Oklahoma Sooners. And so I think that makes you feel really good from an optics standpoint. Like, these guys, they weren't having second thoughts about going to another school or flipping their commitment. They're locked in with Oklahoma, and that's important. In an era of college football where the transfer portal exists and you're going to have coaches that are going to be continuing to recruit these guys, having all 27 of your guys seemingly locked into this program, I think means a lot. So I think Oklahoma fans from that standpoint have a lot to be excited about. Now let's start breaking down this class. And I mean, my favorite part of this class, and I think the favorite part for almost every single Oklahoma Sooner fan, is this defensive line. And I think it's kind of the story of what Brent Venables wants to do with Oklahoma, especially going into the SEC. We got to get the trenches right, specifically on that defensive side. Oh, Brent Venables, that defense, it starts up front. And when Oklahoma is dominating the line of scrimmage, it makes their linebackers play a little bit more free. They can fly around. It takes a little pressure off the secondary. I'm a firm believer in, you look at the best defenses in the country the last couple of years at the college football level, at any level of college football, it starts up front. The best defenses have the best defensive lines because they can stop the run, they can rush the passer. That is the point of playing defense. And when you have a defensive line can do both, I mean, that's how you have an elite defense. It's all good and well to have a good secondary and have a good linebacker group, but if you have a dominant defensive line, it can kind of cover up for maybe a lack of linebacker group or not a great secondary. So you look at this Oklahoma class, and you're really excited that the number one position for us is that defensive line, obviously headlined by five-star David Stone, who is going to be, and we don't need to go in depth about him, he's going to be a freak. I mean, the size, the athleticism, the violence in his hands, he's going to be a special player early for Oklahoma. What I like more is the depth and some of the kind of the gems in the rough, I guess you'd say, for this Oklahoma class. Nigel Smith coming from Melissa, Texas, a guy I like. But, I mean, Jalen Jackson and the Oklahoma fans that have been listening to me for the last couple months talk about this class know I think it starts with Jalen Jackson. He was considered one of, if not the best player on IMG during his high school career, and he's kind of a tone setter, a guy that is going to be dominant against the run, winning at the point of attack, standing up double teams, but he also is a phenomenal athlete for his size, can create penetration, give you some juice in the pass rush. I mean, he used to be like a mid 3-star, according to 24/7 Sports. So I'm happy that he's up inside that top 200, but a guy that I think is really slept on in the recruiting world and wasn't really slept on by the Power 5 programs. I mean, you take a look at his offer list. Pretty much every Power 5 school reached out, offered Jalen Jackson. He's going to be a guy that I'm really excited about. Another guy that I want to talk about real quick on that defensive line is Dani Quay, a guy that, I mean, kind of slept on from the recruiting services because he's not playing at the highest level of high school football. freaky traits, a guy that you just saw at the U.S. Army Bowl going up against some of the better high schoolers in the country, absolutely dominate. So the question of can he make that jump from low-level high school football all the way to the SEC level, you start to feel better about that after seeing him dominate some of the other better high school players across the country. Dani Quay probably needs a year to develop. He's going to be a dude for this Oklahoma defensive line. And then you kind of take a look at the rest of the guys, right? Guys like Wyatt Gilmore. It's a loaded group. It's loaded with talent. It's loaded with depth, and it's loaded with versatility. A lot of different defensive linemen who can do a lot of different things. Really excited about that defensive line group. Now, going to the most underrated position group I think Oklahoma has in this 2024 class, and I'm going to go to the quarterback position. I mean, we'll start off with a guy like Michael Hawkins, but he's not going to be the only guy that I'm going to talk about. Now, Michael Hawkins, the recruiting service is not necessarily the biggest fan of him, which I think is a little bit of a head scratcher. You take a look at a senior year in the state of Texas at the high school level, 5A ball, a 70% completion percentage for over 2,700 yards. And then here's the number I love, 40 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. And playing the quarterback position is about keeping the ball out of harm's way and making those big-time throws. And Michael Hawkins, at a very high level of high school football, has shown that. He also has extreme athleticism, over 900 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns, a guy that can move the chains with his legs, a guy that can extend plays outside the pocket, and is an extremely accurate passer at the high school level. And when you're talking about this Oklahoma quarterback room, it starts with Jackson Darnold, who, we're extremely excited to watch Jackson Arnold play in that bowl game. But if you're an Oklahoma fan and you're looking at the future of this quarterback position, you have Sperry in the 2025 class, you have Jackson Arnold sitting there in 2023. There's a guy in Michael Hawkins who I think at some point during his Oklahoma career is going to be winning football games in Norman. And then another guy that, again, kind of gets left out of the conversation, was a late commit to this class, Brendan Zurbrugg. And for the Oklahoma fans who've been riding with the fellas for the last couple of months, we hopped on and kind of recapped this commitment. This is a guy with a big body at 6'4", needs to put on some weight and fill out that frame, but a guy that can extend plays, is very athletic, has a rocket of an arm. And this is a guy that, coming from the state of Ohio, I think maybe needs some seasoning, needs some development. The traits are there. The body is there. The arm is there. He's another guy that, again, the conversation is going to be Jackson Arnold. Watch out for Brendan Zurbrugg, because when you talk about checking boxes for what you want in traits of a quarterback, Brandon Zurbrugg kind of checks those boxes. So that quarterback position, from the national media perspective, you're not going to say that headlines the class. I think it's a really strong position group for the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, the position group that I think maybe fell a little short of expectations is probably that offensive line. And that's not to say I don't like this offensive line. Eugene Brooks, Eddie Pierre-Louis, Daniel Akinkunmi, I think is going to be a dude at some point coming over from London. Isaiah Autry. I think it's a solid group. I always think at the high school level, you need to make sure you crush that group. Because when you look at other position groups on a football roster, a lot of other position groups, you can go address in the transfer portal, the running back position, at the wide receiver position, linebacker position. There's going to be talent that's available in the transfer portal. If you miss on some guys, you can go and grab some guys. What's a harder position to address is in the transfer portal for offensive linemen. And Oklahoma was able to grab a guy like Walter Ross last year who came in, played really good football at Guyton too. It's harder to, though. And a lot of teams want really quality tackles, and there's just not a lot of quality tackles that are available in the transfer portal. So when I'm looking at an offensive line class, I want it to be loaded with top-end blue-chip talent. And not to say that a guy like Daniel Akinkunmi, who's, I think, really going to be a good football player, is going to fall short of expectations, but you would have liked a little bit more blue-chip talent coming from that offensive line group because, again, some of those guys are projects, right? Daniel Akinkunmi coming over from London, he's going to need a year or two to be a quality starter in the SEC in my eyes. I would have liked to get some guys who are maybe a little bit more talented at the high school ranks, and you could see getting on the field maybe year 1, year 2. Right now, you look at that class and say, I don't know if I feel comfortable with any of these offensive linemen playing year 1. Now, Bill B, proven developer, not going to argue with that, but that is from a broad kind of taking a step back look, probably the position group that I was maybe asking for a little bit more. Now, my most exciting part about doing this, my diamond in the rough candidate, and we're going to stay down here in the 3-star ranks, and we're going to go to the state of Louisiana. I got to find him here. KJ Daniels. Another guy that the Oklahoma fans who've been rocking with the boys for a while, we hopped on late Tuesday night, middle of the spring last year, and talked about a unranked player nationally committing to the Oklahoma Sooners. 5'9", 160 pounds, very, very small burners. I mean, he will be one of the fastest, most dynamic players on the football field whenever he gets to touch the field. And will he play early? Probably not, because he needs to put on some weight. This is a guy that I think can be, when you're fast, right? When you're just faster than the guys trying to cover you and trying to tackle you, that means something. KJ Daniels is going to have that. So yes, he's a little bit undersized. He's coming from the state of Louisiana. He has absolute burners, true top-end speed and athleticism. And I think he's going to be a guy that, come 2-3 years down the road, when you're looking for a guy that can give you an explosive play, I wouldn't be surprised if those explosive plays are happening when KJ Daniels has the football in his hands, when he's working, attacking that deeper third. A guy that, again, needs to get in that weight room, put on some weight. That is what your first year of college football is for. I think he's going to be a dude for the Oklahoma Sooners, a guy that not a lot of people are talking about overall. Top 10 class for the Oklahoma Sooners. I think they got their guys, and I think they got guys that want to be in Norman. That's probably the most important aspect of this class. Big fan of the class. Brent Venables stacking 2 really good classes in 2023 and 2024 right on top of each other. Eyes are now turned to the transfer portal. Eyes are now turned to the 2025 class. We'll continue to cover the Sooners on the recruiting trail. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys as usual. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.